Hello, this is David from DN Cognitive Counseling. First off, I want to thank you, Dan, for first becoming a subscriber, but more importantly about the video that you sent me. I would love to do a video on it, but it is so dense with information and so amazing in a lot of ways. Things I agree with, things I disagree with, but that's always a part of life. But I want to thank you personally for sending it to me and sharing it. And I also have to say, in terms of a lot of the things that you wrote, and I just don't have the ability or time to spend all of it discussing all the things that you wrote, and I thank you so much for. I will say that you have a tremendous strength inside of you to deal with the things that you've done in your life and so much that you've had to overcome. Yet you have obviously an intellect and an ability to both express yourself and hear what other people have to hear. And that's a very big strength. You know, a lot of people have an opinion and they can only see things one way, monolithic. They can't see anything else but what they believe. And you have the ability to say, you know, I could hear another opinion and still disagree, which is fine. And I think that's a wonderful trait. And it serves you well because it's the way that we all grow. We all want the ability for us to grow and to learn. And it's actually why I'm doing this channel. A long time ago, I started this. Well, it's not that long. It's a little over a year. But I started this with the idea of doing parenting series. And it's morphed because people weren't as interested in straight parenting advice and technique, but they are much more interested in the concepts of things that are up to date in terms of what we see, as well as the psychological slant. So in a sense, I do a lot of that to try to help people to understand certain things. But as you questioned, Dan, you asked me a lot of excellent questions that go into politics and finance, and it's like you really are like asking me, David, can you write a book explaining all of these things and helping me to devise it? And the truth is, it would really take a book to go through so many of the things that you asked, which is why I designed the videos to deal with one subject and one idea to try to help people to understand the nature of that. And again, the last video I did was the law of unintended consequence of defunding the police and what it would mean to a society to do that. And at the same time, why, what the negative consequences would be. But I have to share with you one thing, and I think that everybody would probably benefit from it. In the video that Dan sent me, the beginning part of it goes through a montage of the wonderful things and the contributions that African Americans made to this country from the inception. And it's all true. One of my biggest gripes about the month of February being African American History Month is that nobody has learned African American history. They learn Harriet Tubman, they may learn Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, maybe Malcolm X, but it doesn't get more than that. You don't get into James Armistead. You don't get into what the revolutionary patriots that took place during 1776 and really helped the inception of this country. People focus in only on the negatives, but not on the positives. And there was a lot. The problem is that gives people a mindset about their history that is skewed. In the program I work in, I very much try during that month to go over the contributions and ideas that African Americans made to this country from the inception at that time period, when they got up in the areas where they became elected officials at the very, very early parts in American history that's not talked about or known. And it's partly because we don't teach history well in school. We actually, it would go against a lot of narratives that we're told. History is incredibly important. And by the way, you could always frame it in terms of the narrative that you like to tell. But there's an objective part of history. And one of my favorite stories about Frederick Douglass was Frederick Douglass originally thought that the Constitution was a horrible document that needed to be destroyed. And later on, he changed his opinion after studying it for many years, and actually came up with the exact opposite conclusion. If you read his writings, he goes into great detail of why that is. So I thank you again, Dan, for all the things that you shared. Again, I can't go into all of it, and you've shared so much, some of it on a very personal nature, and I very much appreciate it. Your strength is amazing, and I just want you to be aware and take this with you. Whatever doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. It's a very important concept, and it's something as you grow and you keep maturing, you'll see. Now, tonight, I want to talk about something else that has been horrific and horrible, and very, very sad. It actually goes in line with what we were talking about, but when I talk about the law of unintended consequence, when you start to break down structures, you start to see certain behaviors and things that take place.
Take a look here. At least 6 innocent kids across the U.S. were shot and killed in senseless gun violence over this holiday weekend. Here are pictures of just 4 of them. All of these children under the age of 14. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio said his city saw too much violence this weekend with at least 60 victims, 44 different shootings. As CNN's Nick Valencia reports, this is coming as the nation sees an uptick in gun violence after scrutiny on racial bias in policing.
7-year-old Natalia Wallace was playing with her cousins in the front yard of her Chicago area home. In Hoover, Alabama, Royte DeMarco Giles Jr. had just finished 2nd grade and was walking in the mall. 8-year-old Secoriea Turner was out on a drive with her mother in Atlanta. These young faces are among the at least 6 children shot and killed in what was a violent 4th of July holiday weekend.
Enough is enough.
An emotional Atlanta Mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, struggled as she begged anyone with information about Secorea's killing to come forward.
We're fighting the enemy within when we are shooting each other up on our streets in this city, and you shot and killed a baby. And it wasn't one shooter, there were at least 2 shooters. An 8-year-old baby.
In Chicago, Natalie Wallace's family described their soon-to-be 2nd grader as sweet, shy, loving, and good at math.
It's sad. You hear this on the news every day, that a child getting killed, somebody getting killed, but you don't think about it until it's your own.
Summer months in cities like Chicago tend to come with a rise in shootings, but it's never easy to accept, especially when the victims are so young and innocent.
If our lives don't matter to ourselves, then nobody else gonna take our lives serious.
In the nation's capital, the devastating shooting death of 11-year-old Devon McNeil.
I don't have words, like I don't have words.
The boy's grandfather founded the Guardian Angels in D.C., spending years fighting against gun violence, only to outlive his grandchild, who was struck by a bullet when he got out of the car to go into his aunt's house to get a phone charger.
Being out here and fighting this all these years, I never thought it would actually hit home.
The children killed over the weekend were as young as 6 and as old as 14.
They already had dreams and aspirations of being in the music industry.
Young lives with hopes and dreams of their own. Lives cut short on what was meant to be a weekend of celebration.
I want to see the same anger and outrage. I want us to see it on behalf of Secoriea and all the other people and children who are getting shot in our streets. It's a lot of change that has to happen across this country.
One child killed is enough to create outrage, but 6 killed in 72 hours? Some may call that a national wake-up call. And here in the state of Georgia, Governor Kemp has decided to do something about it just a short time ago, declaring a state of emergency to activate as many as 1,000 National Guard members to patrol the streets of the state. Pamela?
All right. Thank you so much, Nick Valencia.
So again, we're talking about here something absolutely horrific, something that should never happen. 6 children in 72 hours dead. This doesn't even count the 6-year-old that was walking with her father, and this happened in New York, and the father was killed right in front of the daughter on the street. And there's this beautiful imagery of this showing on the TV that is absolutely heart-wrenching. Obviously the term beautiful here means absolutely the exact opposite of being facetious, but And I don't even have words to describe how horrible and painful this is. Now, why is this all happening? Why is there a rash? Well, anytime you knock down an authority, anytime you bring it down, you start to see anarchy. And you start to see people pushing the boundaries, thinking, oh, I can go a little further. I am not a fan of systems. Systems fail us. Systems do things that are wrong. But without them, we're going to see a lot more pain and suffering. I don't know how many of you out there know what happened in Evergreen. I think it was in 2017, where the students were emboldened by certain individuals in the faculty, and they were able to keep pushing the boundary and push the boundary and push the boundary to the point where there was a whole bunch of issues and problems that took place. People were threatened, people were pushed out, there was assaults. It just got to be worse and worse on a college campus. And with, again, the police told to stand down. I understand there's inequity. I understand there are problems. I understand that there are issues that need to be worked on. The way to do it is not to tear down the system and lead to more death and destruction of innocence. You can't destroy a system without a lot of casualties of innocence. It is much better to take the goodwill that people have created and seen and say there are problems in the system that we need to fix and work towards fixing them. That is a much better avenue with less destruction and less death. I don't want to see more death. I watch this and my stomach turns. I feel sick to my stomach. There's a famous attorney. His name is Leo Terrell. For those of you who don't know Leo Terrell, he's a civil rights attorney. He basically started out as an attorney for the NAACP, and he was basically an advisory board member of the Equal Employment Commission. He's a former member of the California Statewide Commission Against Hate Crimes, and he's been an advocate for equality and to stop a lot of these issues for many, many years. And he wrote an article in Newsweek, which I'm going to show you in a second, which I think is important. Leo explains, basically, if you see here, I spent over 20 years as a civil rights attorney in California, and I'm known for not taking I'm known for not taking a backseat to anyone on police misconduct cases. Remember Dwayne Nelson, the LA Sheriff's County Department, hogtied and suffocated him in a car? We won the case and put the rightful offender in jail. Or Margaret Mitchell, the homeless woman who was shot and killed by the LAPD. We won that case too and ultimately changed the nation's standards and how law enforcement handles mentally ill victims. And yet, my commitment to justice and my substantial track record on putting racially driven criminals behind bars has lent itself to returning calls that I've made in reaching out to longtime colleagues and friends who were behind me every step of the way when I was on their side. Furthermore, why am I only getting booked on conservative outlets? I'll tell you why. It's because I'm calling out the farce that is Black Lives Matter and doing so loudly and proudly. Why? Because this organization does not speak for me. As an African American, and if you truly believe that Black lives do matter, you should reconsider taking your cues from this group of self-serving agenda. The starting place for this argument also finds its roots in the tragic death of George Floyd. Police body cameras from the scene depict exactly what law enforcement should not do. And in fact, the officers on the scene raised questions about what was going on there. But are the protests and riots we've recently seen the appropriate response to one bad cop? Yeah, I say one bad cop, because right now there are several names on social media about a few killed by officers, but in reality, it's a small number. However, where is the outrage for the constant murder and mayhem that transpires every day in Chicago, Atlanta, Detroit, and Los Angeles? Where is the outrage for a black 3-year-old shot and killed in the car? Where's the outrage for a black 10-year-old girl shot and killed while watching TV in her home? Why isn't Black Lives Matter protesting these tragedies? Why aren't you told? Do as we are socially need a body camera or video camera to be outraged? These children are living in domestic war zones, and the adults who should come to their defense do not demand change. Instead, they demand defunding the police. That would be the same as police who are the last line of defense in drug and gang-ravaged neighborhoods. Residents of the neighborhoods know the vital job of the police too. But this woke generation of Black Lives Matter activists and protesters lack both the knowledge and perspective. They pretend they're fighting the same Martin Luther King 60 years ago. But this is not 1960. We don't have Bull Connor and roving packages of German shepherds. In reality, Black Lives Matter is composed of modern-day charlatans who learned the profitable ways to protest from Al Sharpton of the world. Style over substance, chaos over real change. Is Black Lives Matter setting up urban outreach and mentoring? No. Is Black Lives Matter demanding better schools and safe community activities? No. Is Black Lives Matter paying for the funerals of the black babies killed by violence? No. Has Black Lives Matter set up GoFundMe or demand donations of any destroyed minority-owned businesses in Minneapolis? Of course not. To make it worse, the Democratic Party is literally taking a pandering knee to them. What has Nancy Pelosi done for the African Americans? What has Joe Biden done? Nothing, in fact. The president they love to hate, Donald Trump, has done more in 3 years for black Americans and police reform than Joe Biden has done in decades. With one recent executive order, President Trump accomplished more for police reform than Obama-Biden administration did over the last 8 years in office. Many do not like what I have to say, but enough is enough. I'm being consistent in my beliefs by recognizing those who actually are helping and those who are hurting the cause. It's not always the answer you want, but it's important to support the actually making a difference. Naturally, you won't hear this frequently on media outlets because it's not profitable. It doesn't fit their approved narrative. And in election year, it's all about the best narratives and your preferred candidate. Yes, Black Lives Matter. They matter all the time, in every violent death, not just a few incidences where police officers were involved. Now, I'm not saying that I share Leo Terrell's idea, but Van Jones actually made very similar comments earlier on and actually applauded Donald Trump on the police reform. Yet, you'll hear people just talk about the racist aspects. Not to say that Donald Trump hasn't made very, very horrible and troubling remarks, but the narratives being created right now are not looking at reality. They're looking to win. And when you could have a difference of opinion, you could think people are wrong or right. But the problem is when we try to change facts and to dismiss things. Now, Leo Terrell, for years, I don't think there was a Republican he's ever liked. Ever. But to hear him say that was actually shocking, which is the reason why I'm saying this. And for anybody out there who knows Leo Terrell, you understand how shocked it was to actually read that. And when I came across it, it made me think of Dan. Because Dan, what you were able to do was able to see there's another way of looking at things. And again, you don't have to agree with Leo Terrell. You could think Leo's wrong about this and wrong about that. There are things in there that I disagree with. But the things I disagree with are not what's relevant. What is relevant is the horror that's taking place, that is true, is that our systems are being torn at. When we don't have faith in the system, what ends up happening is we get chaos. When we have chaos, we have more people that die. And that's the sad truth. If in a school system, you can't go to a teacher and you can't go to the principal, what do the kids do? Lord of the Flies. And that's exactly why that book was written and what shows you what happens when there is no authority. Authority needs to be held accountable. In fact, authorities need to be held accountable to a higher standard. And I think that we as a society have to work towards making that better. What we can't do is tear down society, or you get a revolution. And when you have a revolution, people die. And sadly, it's the innocents. I hope that's not where we're at. I hope that in this country we do not want to see that amount of death. I hope that we will mourn for the loss and the loss that's been going on for a long time in this country, and to do things to try to make it better, not worse. To create the ability for the systems to become more equitable, not destroy them. We're trying to replace them with something that does not guarantee any more equitability. And again, I thank you for those who've joined this channel, and I appreciate that very much. And I hope that you'll share, like, and subscribe, but most importantly, share. And again, if you disagree, as Dan did originally, as Corey did at a time before, I really hope that you'll post something and challenge and say why you disagree. If you want me to see something or get a different idea, as Dan showed me, I would love to see it as well. And again, if you'd like to become a patron to this, please hit the link below and you can become a patron there. I thank you very much. Have a good night and good mental health.